What's up, nerds, and welcome back to the Global Frequency. I am your host, Nefarious.
And I'm Frequency Girl.
And tonight we are joined by Mike Spring from Out of Time Comics, here to tell us all about his creator-owned comic book crowdfunding campaign, the 8-Bit Slasher, an original horror comedy graphic novel, live on Kickstarter. Hello. Mike!
Hi there.
Mike! Mike, guess what day it is?
Man. Let me tell you how many times I've heard that in the last 10, 15 years. On Wednesdays especially, I hear that a lot at work.
Yeah, but it's Monday. It's Monday, not Wednesday. It's not hump day, unfortunately. But either way, today is the day we're going to put you in the hot seat. But first, we got to get to know you a little bit better so, there's no hard feelings.
That's fine.
So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Orlando, Florida, actually, right in the middle of all the tourists, really right smack dab in the middle of theme park central. I in high school, I lived across the street from SeaWorld, so I would get woken up by seals barking in the morning. That's how close I lived. So yeah, that's where I'm from. But now I'm located in upstate New York. I don't know. I went up, like I'm pointing up as if that means anything. I'm located in New York, right outside the capital area, and yeah, that's my home base.
Oh man, Mo's comment. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Neff Akira was a 6 out of 10 movie.
6 out of 10?
But I still feel personally attacked by that.
6 out of 10? I mean, that's... I don't even know if that's tough but fair. I think that's just... You docked it points because it's anime. I think that's what it was. It was like, Akira's easily an 8 out of 10, but you're like, nah, 6 out of 10 because it's cartoons that aren't from the U.S.
I've got complicated thoughts on Akira, but I think we'll have to wait until later in the show because I don't want to get anybody.
You don't want me to kick you early. Okay, I got you.
Exactly. We'll be like, oh, we're having technical difficulties, and Mike can't join us anymore. So but we can come back to it later.
The spectacle of it, the backgrounds, primarily the backgrounds and the cityscapes and the music.
100%.
There's nothing that gives that vibe, especially the woodblock drums when they're encountering the motorcycle clowns for the first time. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire 8-year-old life.
I get it, and I have owned more than one Akira T-shirt in my life. This is what I'm saying. They're complicated opinions. It's not a
right. It's
not a black and white thing for me. So
right, very colorful actually.
Yeah.
So what kind of comics do you like to read?
Man, I like to read everything. If I told you how much money I spend at my local comic shop every week, I can't do that because I'm afraid my wife might come across it and I can't put it on record. But I read everything. I've been reading comics my whole life. I mean, since I was like 5 years old. And now I'm firmly in my mid-20s, in case you can't tell from the gray and stuff like that, and the fact that I have 17-year-old twins. But so I mean, I love superheroes. I'm not gonna lie, big superhero fan. Been reading superheroes my whole life, but I've also been reading. I mean, I'll just read anything that's a comic book. Some of my favorites of all time are like Saga, Strangers in Paradise, Bone. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I'm a huge Superman fan. So. Gosh, there's just not much I'm not reading these days. I keep trying to cut my list down, and then they keep putting out new books, and so I'll send my list to the comic store. I'm like, take off these titles, but add these, and I look at it. I'm like, it's the same amount of titles. There's money here, and it's but yeah. So I read everything.
You and Frequency Girl both.
Yeah.
She's constantly messing with the pull list.
Yeah,
like it's some sort of
subscription. I do more adding than taking away.
Right.
And she comes back with stacks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you find time? Like, I can read 3 of these, and she's like, well, I got 17. Oh boy.
Yeah, I decided a few years ago that collecting comics and reading comics are 2 very different things. Even though I'm a reader, and so I collect omnibuses. Do I read my omnibuses? I have read a couple, but I have a lot more than that. So I like to organize comics and buy them. And then sometimes if the winds align, I actually get to read them. But I'm getting
No.
better. I'm trying.
I know there are a lot of people out there who hunt down missing issues and like to
Yep.
collect a full run of something to have the floppies, because the collecting in and of itself is like a hobby. But I'm a savage, a
It's
heathen
true.
when it comes to reading my books, because I fold them over.
Oh
Like,
man,
yeah, no, I'm a horrible human.
yeah, that does
That's
hurt a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
just an evil, because I'm a writer. I don't care about the longevity of a thing. I want to live with it. I want to hold it and fold it and live inside of it. I don't want to like pristinely turn the pages with tweezers. What?
But that folding over goes for more than just like floppies.
Oh,
That's
dude, it's
a
everything.
graphic novel.
graphic
That's an
novels.
it doesn't matter if he will make it.
If I can fold you, I
Yeah.
will.
I mean,
So-
I get that, like, to each their own. I'm a writer as well, and I'm a reader, but I'm also a collector, and so like that hurts a little bit to hear you say that.
I get that. I get that. I mean, if it's something precious, put it in a CGC case. That way I can't touch it.
Right.
That's my perspective on it. Yeah.
He's not allowed to touch my comic.
That's
I can
true.
understand that. I can
I'm
understand
not, but I still do sometimes when she's not
And
looking.
then I yell at him
Uh-huh.
because I know.
Oh, you do? You do know?
I know.
She knows, guys. Time is short. Time is fleeting. So, what comics helped shape your appreciation for the medium? Because there's something special about comic books as a medium.
Sure.
What works really, made you realize that?
A couple of things that jump out at me. One, I always have to bring up. It's my favorite comic book story of all time. It's a Spider-Man story called "The Death of Jean DeWolf" by Peter David. It was a 4-issue story in Peter Parker: The Spectacular Spider-Man, issues 107 through 110, and I read it about once a year. It is just absolutely hands down my favorite story of all time. It's dark and emotional and moving and still has some humor, but it's just such a well-scripted story, and I love everything about it. And so it's by Peter David, if I didn't mention that. And whenever I read it, I'm like, this is what the comics medium can be. Like, this is just it's a superhero story with a fairly simple bad guy, but it's just such a cut above everything else that I read, that it always stands out for me. That's definitely one of the things that is always in the back of my head. I would say Strangers in Paradise. I know I kind of mentioned a couple of these, but Strangers in Paradise, Terry Moore, is such a great comic that's relationship based. It's not superheroes or anything like that. And I think I take a lot of influence from that. Especially my last comic was a superhero rom-com, and I definitely was inspired by Strangers in Paradise for that. And I think too, again, I've already mentioned it as one of my favorites. Saga by Brian K. Vaughan is just it's so surprising all the time. And I do try to always fit in some good surprise. There's nothing I love more as a reader than being surprised, or watching a movie. If you can really truly surprise me, like twist ending or whatnot, and like blow my mind, that's my favorite feeling in the world. So I always try and fit something in like that into my books. It's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And Saga does that to the nth degree, to the point sometimes where I'm like, Brian Vaughan, why do you hate your readers so much? Like, stop killing off every character we love. You know what I mean? But just that sense of being able to do that has been a big influence on me. So I'd say those are a couple that really have shaped my appreciation for the medium and kind of how I try to, craft my storytelling.
And other than those, are there any that you've read that got you going, you know what, I could do that, or I want to do that, and that's something that's, now motivating you to go learn how to make a comic, how to write a comic script, how to work with an artist to do thumbnails and layouts, learn lettering, that, all the things that it takes to make a comic? Were there comics out there where you were like, you know what, yeah, I want to do this?
So yes and no is the answer to that. So to give you my brief kind of origin story, when it came to getting into writing, like I've done like writing, like I've done like journalism and like entertainment reviews for like 20 years, and I've done podcasting and all this stuff. But I always had ideas for writing fiction. I never got really around to it for a long time. And then I'd say about 10, 12 years ago, I was reading a popular YA book, and I will not say which one because of what I'm about to say next. It's not Twilight, it's not Hunger Games. Those are the ones people always guess. It's not either of those, but very popular enough to be made into a movie. And it was a great concept for a book, but as I'm reading it, I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever read in my life. Like, it is so terribly
It
written.
wasn't Twilight?
No, believe it or not. I actually like the Twilight books, so now I've just lost that.
Oh, sorry.
But that's all right.
Just like Twilight.
And it was so badly written that it just floored me. And I was like, you know what? If this guy can make $1 million writing, I can at least write something this good. You know, like I may not be Neil Gaiman, but I can write something at least as good as this book. And that's what really got me started into writing. And then it took me a while to morph from writing prose books into comics. I don't know that there was any comic particularly that made me kind of seek out the hows and the wheres and the whys of it. I think I just sort of put it off because I was intimidated by it for a long time. And then I finally was like, you know what? Let me give this a shot. Let me try this and see if I can do it. And I started doing it. And I think, yeah, I did okay. So no specific comics in that way that I can think of off the top of my head, but definitely a book.
Yeah, definitely a book that kind of got you thinking about doing it yourself. I mean, yeah, I think for me, it's a mix of comic books that are really inspiring and comic books that are just so awful. You're like, I could do this better. You know, I want to do it because this is bad.
Right, right.
And it's funny because at the same time, there are some books which are bad, but you love them so much that you're like, I want to do it like this. You know, I want to, right. For me, Cyber Force #1 is one of those books.
Okay.
I love that book. I love that book to death.
Yeah.
And most people are like, Cyber Force is the dumbest of the Image series because it's just like, what's the point? You know, like Gen 13, where the kids of Team 7, Youngblood was like the superhero team that kind of started everything and connects it to the other parts of the world. Spawn is like this megalithic title. Cyber Force was Silvestri's project, right? And there were just a bunch of sort of like, you know, Ripclaw is just like Warblade, you know, like they're these characters. The only thing that Cyberforce had going for it was Stryker, and he had 3 arms on one side, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And my writer and I, Mo knows this, have had many arguments about how Stryker was so cool and could not possibly work because, you know, like pectoral and deltoid muscles are necessary for all of the arms. So he would have like 3 breasts, and it would be really weird. But I loved it. I loved it. And in the first issue, there was like a frame narrative where Ripclaw said narrated it through a Native American folk poem, actually, about a young deer running through the woods being pursued by hunters. And it was narrated that way, and he was watching Velocity run away from Cybernary, right? The bad guys. And it's just framed beautifully. I was like, I'm 13 or 14, and I'm just like, this hits me so hard and so well, and the metaphor involved there, you know, it just blew my little tiny brain when I was a kid. And now, like, even today, my adult tiny brain, every time I think about it, you know, gets re-energized to say, I want to write a story, a visual story like that, with that sort of literary framing. And then, of course, there are plenty of comics that I've read over the years that are just not good, and like gave me the confidence of like, well, I've read this. I know it's not good. I know I could do better. So why the heck not just learn what you don't know and go and do it, right? So speaking of that, right, talking about how you got in, what was like the first book that you put out? What?
So
my tiny brain? Is there a joke about my tiny brain?
No. Mobig says, Neff, I would appreciate it if you would stop leaning back and revealing.
Ouch. That feels.
I haven't showed him the back. You know, there's a whole thing on the back too.
Oh yeah. There you go. I like it. Let's see. So the first book I put out, is that what the question was?
Yeah. How'd you get your start, and what was the first book that you put out?
So the first book I put out was Red, White, and Broke. That's this guy back here. And then, because why not? I got the book right here. So Red, White, and Broke was my first comic, and it's a superhero comedy about a superhero. He can't afford to pay his bills because every time he flies off to save the world, he gets fired from his day job. So he launches a Kickstarter campaign to crowdfund being a superhero. And I was
very meta, very meta.
Exactly. And I love meta humor, and I really, I love stuff that really, I'm always fascinated by how fiction and the real world interact. And that is something that you'll see as a common theme through a lot of my books. And so it was a case of, like I said, I had been writing prose books for a while, and I'd always wanted to write comics, but, you know, I was always intimidated by the idea of like, because I'm like, oh no, what would I do with Spider-Man if I had to write him for 12 issues? And then finally one day I realized like, Marvel is not knocking my door down to write Spider-Man. So maybe I don't need to worry about that just yet. And I can just focus on writing something that I do have an idea for. So this idea had been living in my head for a while. I found an artist online and we got working on it. We ran our first Kickstarter for issue 1. It went well. Finished the whole miniseries, 4-issue miniseries, and then collected into a trade paperback, and then said, I'm never doing that again. Never going to do a miniseries ever again. I'm not patient enough for the time frame it takes to put out single issues, one after the other. So everything I've done since then, moving forward, is in a different format. It's a complete graphic novel, 48-page square bound, one shot, complete story, start to finish. Because that way, I can give people a finished product every time I put a new book out and not have to be like, here's issue 1, here's issue 2, so on and so forth. It took a long time, it took over a year. And that's pretty fast in the Kickstarter world, considering I was crowdfunding everything. Took me about a year and 3 months to do the whole miniseries, but I was like, ooh, that's a lot. I don't, I just don't have the attention span for that.
It can get
so
very involved.
Right, exactly. It's been a big hit for me. I sell a ton of copies of it. I did really well with it on Kickstarter. Sell a ton of copies at conventions. So that's kind of my signature book at the moment.
And tell me about Out of Time Comics. When was it formed, and what are your future plans for the imprint?
Sure. So Out of Time Comics is my publishing company that I created for publishing these comics. I officially launched it in 2020 when I launched the first issue, Red, White, and Broke. Right now it encapsulates Red, White, and Broke, and then my second comic, Uncaped, and then of course my new comic, Bit Slasher. So right now it's really just kind of a publishing arm for me, kind of a business to sort of make it like, hey, this isn't just some dude in the basement comics. It's like a comic, company. The hope, though,
some dude in a basement who filed an LLC.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Dude in a chicken in a basement.
Nothing wrong with being in the basement. I'm just saying, like,
some dude in a basement who files taxes.
Right. You'll see here my slogan, when fun comes first. My hope being that when you see, to get to the point where when people see the Out of Time Comics logo, they will be able to say, hey, you know what? I know I'm gonna have a good time reading this book, right? Because I put a lot of humor into my comics. I don't know that I could write a not humorous comic. And I love the dark stuff, the grim and gritty stuff. I'm down with all that stuff, but I also sometimes just want to have fun and be entertained. And so my goal is, like, when you see Out of Time Comics, you go, I know this book will put a smile on my face to make me feel good, make me feel happy that I read it. So that's kind of my goal. And then eventually, like right now, it's just my publishing arm. I'm definitely not opposed to, at some point, hopefully, expanding and bringing other people in, and trying to get it to become a bigger thing. But that's just a lot of time and a lot of money that so far I have not yet, haven't quite yet
been able to crowdfund. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Been able to raise.
Yeah.
Do you want to say hello to everyone in the chat?
I do.
She wants to say hi to all her friends.
We haven't said hello. We have Will, Creators Outlet.
First.
Will. We have Mo Biggs. It is officially a stream.
It's been a stream for a while. He's been ribbing me from the chat.
I know, but we have to acknowledge it.
Hating on my shirt.
Yes. We have David Patterson watching on Facebook. Hello.
That's one of your friends.
He says hey to me, so I'm going to say hi. What's up,
David? You can say hi to me.
We have Snoopa Sam.
What's
Hello,
up?
Snoopa Sam.
What's up, Sam Quentin?
We have Chauncey Blakey. Hello.
Chauncey Blakey.
You usually say hello to everyone, so I feel weird doing this. But that's
okay. You're allowed to go down the list and say
We
hi to
have
people.
the one and only Michael Bancroft, who says Twilight was his guess. And he read Twilight and The Hunger Games. But the worst book he read was True Blood. And I've never read True Blood.
See, I'm with Bancroft on Twilight and Hunger Games. I think what's her name who read them. I read some of. See, dude, this is the thing. Give me 6 pages of anything, and I will decide whether or not it's good or bad based simply on those 6 pages.
You did read part of Hunger Games.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. You had issues with
what is her
plot,
real name?
But,
what's her name?
Suzanne Collins.
She can write prose like a demon. She is a demon when it comes to write. She choked me up, right? Like, so her prose was so evocative that it really got to me. However, her world building and
I'm gonna do this, otherwise the whole rest of the stream will be Neff ranting about the plot of the Hunger Games. So we're just gonna do that, and instead we're gonna say hello to Silver Ogre. Hello, it's good to see you, my friend. Haven't seen you in a while. And we have Edwin the Ace, Volume 3 coming soon. Osvito.
What is up, Ace? Bloodbone, second chance now not live on Fun My Comic.
Yeah.
Speaking of, actually, that's one of the next questions. You have anyone else you want to say hi to?
Quiet Red Media. Hello.
Hey, Quiet Red.
And
Glad to see you.
That's everyone
Been chiming
new.
in before on the
Everyone else
Twitters.
is just chatting. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Okay, now go back.
Talk amongst yourselves. So you've run several Kickstarter campaigns since 2020, right? Very successful. I think like 8 Kickstarter campaigns.
Yep.
And you're pretty well established there. Have you tried any other crowdfunding websites or explored any other options?
I have thought about it, and I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I've talked to some people about.
I pull the trigger all the time. Why not?
One, because I'm a creature of habit, and I know Kickstarter really well. I like to know things before I try to use them, and I know Kickstarter well at this point because I've done so many campaigns. So it's I don't want to say it's easy for me, but like I understand the Kickstarter world and the Kickstarter audience. The other ones I don't yet. I have been talking to people about Indiegogo, and that's on my radar. And I think I may be trying that in the future as a supplementary thing, to kind of add on to what I'm doing with Kickstarter. But yeah, I haven't yet officially tried any of them. So part of it comes down to I'm fairly a one-man show, so it's a lot of times it's hours in the day. Like I have an artist, a writer, and a letterer. I mean, an artist, a colorer, and a letterer, and I pay them all to do their jobs, and they're all a fantastic team. But none of them are doing the behind-the-scenes work aside from the drawing, the coloring, and the lettering. So it's kind of just me, and I just run out of time. So it's like, I got to go explore Indiegogo and learn how it works and do all that. And then there's a backer kit and all this stuff. And I just haven't, Zoop and all this. It's so much to like. My brain can only hold
crowdfunder, and then there's Fun My Comic, and a lot of other potential comic book specific crowdfunding platforms, or indie specific crowdfunding platforms, either or maybe both, on the near future. I know there are crowdfunding websites that aren't going to be doing the same amount of like tech startup and patent startup kickstarting or crowdfunding that both Kickstarter and Indiegogo seem to do. It's going to be mostly indie projects, music, or video games, or comic books, and that kind of environment is really well suited for comic books that run on these larger platforms to find a home.
Right.
But, I completely agree with you, and learning, something new can be daunting. I'm a one-man show. It's just run by one woman.
Yeah. I mean, I have a wife. She does just not get involved with this stuff.
I have one. I just don't know where I put her.
He says, I've been trying to reach you guys. Is it by any chance to tell us about our car warranty? That you get the messages. I've been trying to reach you about your car warranty. I'm sorry, Phil. I will check my messages. I didn't realize. Sorry,
Phil. Yeah, hit us up on. Wait, is he on Twitter? I don't know. You can message her on Facebook. You're on Facebook right now.
Yeah. I will ask him.
So another question: have you ever heard of Fista Games?
Fista Games.
Fista, Fistah, all capital letters. Fista Games.
I feel like I'm going to fail if I say no, but it does not ring a bell.
That's okay. Because I was looking up 8-Bit Slasher, the crowdfunding campaign, the comic book, and it came across the very first result on Google. And, this is not exclusive to you. You type in my book, Mavericks, Mavrics. The first thing that comes up on Google is the Dallas Mavericks, and I'm in a fight with the Dallas Mavericks to get ranked first in Google search. So it's a couple hundreds of millions of dollars to fight them on that. But Fista Games is actually the first result on Google, and they put out the original 8-Bit Slasher video games with a computer program that were coded onto the NES cartridges. So they did Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Candyman, etc., etc. They've also released some original titles like Carpet Shark, which is a hilarious concept. You're a shark that lives in an 8x8 square of carpet on the floor, and you eat anyone that steps on. So you move around and try and eat. It's called Carpet Shark. I think that would make a fantastic comic book. I think you could do something with Carpet Shark, and what happens when Carpet Shark breaks loose in Filene's basement, just jumping from carpet to carpet. You know what I mean? It's possible to do something like that. Sure. But they also did a video game. The most recent video game they did was a brawler called Fista Fight. And I thought it was funny because Eddie Mayhem, the main character of your book, 8-Bit Slasher, comes from an 8-Bit brawler game. right?
Yes.
In world.
Right.
So you don't have any affiliation with Fista Games, I'm assuming.
No,
right?
apparently
I
just like to steal other people's ideas without realizing.
No, not steal their ideas.
No.
Would your book make a good video game?
Right.
Because they do literal 8-bit slasher video games.
Yeah.
How meta would it be to have an 8-bit slasher video game of the 8-bit slasher comic, which is a comic about an 8-bit slasher character from a video game?
I mean,
boom!
Amazing. I think that sounds incredible. I should reach out to
I
them.
think you should call them up because they have a relatively small following on YouTube and Instagram and all of that, and it's all indie funded. They do it all in house.
Right.
It might be hilarious to see what kind of partnership that would look like. And
Absolutely.
honestly, I would be immensely entertained if it went that deep meta, because you like meta. You said it earlier, right? Have a video game character from a comic book become a video game, so that the video game character can come out of that video game and go back into the comic. Yeah, there it is.
I love it. All right, I'm gonna look into that.
Cool. I'll give you their contact information. I was in no way sponsored by them in this video.
Mobig says Fista Games sounds like they would publish B-Rose's game.
Where's Baldo? Yes. Well done, Mo Biggs, bringing it back. That's fantastic. There's some deep lore there that I'm not going to get into with you. I'll tell you in the back room, but it's just gonna
wrong one. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Phil. What's up? Phil Diaz from Zade Comics. So why don't we take a look at 8-bit slasher, right? Why don't you bring up the campaign page? First off, the main character is a murderous slasher who's summoned to the real world from a video game. Is he the protagonist or the antagonist? I know he's the main character, but it's a horror.
He's not really the main character. He's just sort of the icon. He's like how Michael Myers, is entirely the main character in a Halloween film, right? So basically, he's Eddie Mayhem is like a very popular 80s, 90s movie slasher. He's been added to this video game as like a DLC character, like when they like to add like Spawn into your video games, into Mortal Kombat or whatever. And so he's in this video game, and there's a college party going on, and some kids do some stupid things, which I won't spoil here, but effectively they suck Eddie Mayhem out of the video game and into the real world. And then he goes on a killing spree, which is what slashers will do, of course. So the main characters of the book are this group of 6 teenagers who, he sets his sights on, and they go on the run, and he is trying to kill them. The trick is, in addition to trying to survive him, he starts to bring the video game world into the real world. So now they have to also deal with things that they don't know how to deal with, like power-ups and boss battles and henchmen and things like that. So there's a lot of video game tropes that come into the real world that makes it even more challenging for them to survive, besides the fact that there's a slasher trying to kill them. So that's kind of so he's in the book a lot. He is the Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees of the book, but the main characters, of course, are the teenagers who may or may not get killed off one by one.
Okay, so he is the antagonist. Why don't you tell us then about the protagonists?
Sure,
I'm sure there's a list. Are there photos of them or photos? Are there drawings of them anywhere on this page?
Yes, if you scroll down far enough. I didn't do one of those who are the characters things, but if you scroll down far enough, you will eventually come across some interior pages from the book, and that will show them. And let's see, I got to go with the eye catchers, but here's that's not one of the main characters, so I can show that one. That's like an extra who gets killed. Let's see, go a little further. So that's Sarah. She's kind of our main character. She's your typical college student, pretty kick-ass kind of chick. And there's the whole group there. You got Sarah, you got RJ, you got Vic, you got Lacey and Madison. It's your typical group of friends. Jeff is like the comic book video game nerd. He kind of helps them navigate because he's the one who sort of knows the tropes of the video games. Vic is like your sarcastic party guy. RJ is the guy who's got a crush on Sarah. And there's Madison. She's kind of the Velma of the group, if you will, slightly nerdy. And Lacey's not in this particular panel, but Lacey is the sorority girl, if you will. So that's the group of teenagers trying to hit on some of the classic character tropes of a slasher film. I wasn't trying to reinvent slasher movies or anything like that, right? I'm trying to, bring the tropes and the classic moments from a slasher film into a comic book, alongside bringing in the kind of video game elements to add a different twist to it.
Yeah. to bring the video game stuff into
Right.
real life. Kind of
Right.
like how what was the dumb movie book thing that Steven Spielberg
Ready Player One?
adapted? Thank you. Thank you. The creator was
That
like,
movie
this is
book
impossible to
thing.
do as a movie. And Spielberg was like, challenge
Hold
accepted.
my beer.
And he did it with like mid 2000s technology.
Right.
But yeah, that or Regular Guy with Ryan Reynolds, where he finds out he's an NPC in a video game, which I thought was really cute.
I just
But
watched
it's
that.
any of those like fundamental I guess fascinations with the video game world and how that crosses over or connects to the real world. So, I'm going to ask you real quick, are there any subtextual themes that this satirical comedy and horror slasher comic might be exploring?
That is a deep question, my friend.
Come on, you watch this show.
No, I know. I'm just, I'm not. I don't always have my thinking cap on.
Okay, I have my camo.
Is it bad if I say not really? Like
No, it's not. It's not at all. That would mean that it's pure experience and entertainment. It's purely driven by let's have fun, which is kind of the logo, the motto on your logo, right?
Right, exactly.
And so it's all about let's just go for the ride. That doesn't mean they're not present, and it also doesn't mean that people who read it aren't going to read into it and infer that it's there, and you can be like, but it wasn't implied. So
yeah. I mean, it's not stuff that I was working on specifically. There are some subtexts in my previous comics, Red, White, and Broken, Uncaped. There's some definitely a little bit kind of deeper stuff going on there. This one, I really wanted to just kind of write a slasher movie in a comic book form, and I wanted to mash it up with video games. Like that's as deep as I got with it. You know what I'm saying?
So nothing like modern entertainment will be the death of the next generation because their obsession with the esoteric and the arcane, remote, recondite, or abstruse, whatever draws them into this world. Their obsession with the world that is not this one will ultimately lead them astray and cause their downfall through. What?
I say he could do this all day, so you may want.
No, I mean that's all. That all could be the interpretation. I can see where people could get that from it, and if that's how they want to read it, then great. If they get something out of it that way, that's awesome. My intention was, this where fun comes first, right? To have fun with it. I wanted it to be a fast-paced, horror movie in a comic book form that's but still has humor and fun to it. That was my intention. So if people want to, read deeper than that, knock yourselves out. You know what I mean?
I like
criticize anyone.
I like that it says Murder Hobo on whatever it is.
Murder Hobo magazine.
Yeah, so that's
I like the little
Ryan Brown, who did that cover, did the artwork for Murder Hobo. So that would be his little.
I like that call out, and I like the crow poster.
That was
I
mine.
like the little Easter eggs.
Yeah.
That was mine.
I have to say though, Murder Hobo looks like it's bound on the right hand side, so that would be Murder Hobo the manga. Because it would be read. It would have to be read this way, right? So now Mo can't get that cover. I've ruined it for you, Mo. You'll forever see it. So yeah, you're using like the horror movie formula, like the slasher movie formula. It's timeless. It's a classic. It's the big bad Freddy, right? Or Jason, Mike Myers, like Candyman. There's something stalking the group of teens, and one by one they get picked off. Usually the ones that are naughty and have sex die first.
Right.
I don't know how many of the tropes you lean into, but doesn't look like you have a remarkably diverse cast, so I guess there is no order in which these people are going to die.
Well, I mean, there's more diversity to the cast than you can see in black and white, I'll say. But I do try to avoid some of those tropes too, and just
that was kind of the bad joke that I was making.
Yeah, no, I get where you're going with that. I get where you're going with that. But no, I did try to. Actually, it's funny because there was a couple times where there was some scenes where I was like, okay, I knew which characters I wanted to live and which characters I wanted to die, right? So no spoilers. But there were times where as I was writing it, then I was like, but if this person dies before this person, that kind of sends this message. Or if I send this person first, then it's like, kind of is a little bit cliche to do that. So I tried to change it up so that I wasn't falling victim to some of those traps. You know what I mean? I did try to be cognizant of that type of thing so that
Isn't it weird when you're writing like that and you're just going with the story that's in your head, right? And, and you're sticking to it. And then suddenly a moment of realization that we live in a world where there are constraints and tropes, and people have had reactions and there's been backlash to those tropes.
Yep.
That realization suddenly derails the forward momentum of the story, and you start going, wait, I can't do that because modern audiences might not ...
Yep.
It's happened to me several times, actually, in Mavericks Origins Part 1. When I was writing it, I got, I surprised myself with how many times I was like, wait, am I doing a bad thing here? Is this a sexism?
Right.
Am I doing a bad thing? I don't know. And then I had to ask my editor, and he was like, yeah, you're totally fucking up, dude. Don't do it. No.
Yeah. It's
so,
for sure.
Do we want Eddie to win? Do we want the kids to win, or do we ultimately want Eddie to win and just kill everybody?
I think it depends on how you view the world. You know what I mean? I'm a nice.
I want
guy.
Eddie to win.
I like likable characters. I don't like to write horrible characters that people hate. So I like to think that people will be rooting for the teenagers, and that when one of them dies, they're going to be a little bit sad, because I tried to write likable characters. There's sometimes you watch some of these movies and you're like, well, thank God that person died. They hated them, and that's fine. But that's not my favorite thing, So I would say, I'm rooting for the teenagers, but again, your mileage may vary. If you guys want to see the slasher win, again, I can't spoil anything, but he does some damage, we'll say. And we'll leave it at that.
So he's not really just Patrick Bateman in a Red X mask.
No, he definitely is not.
So let's take a look at the campaign page. All right. So first thing, going all the way back up to the top.
Well, I have to put it back in the thing.
You just kill my momentum. Just knock the knees right out from under me.
Too.
What?
I said you could pay attention.
I'm interviewing the guests. You're supposed to be paying attention to me. I'm the center of attention. I mean, the guest is, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So we back up.
Lobig says, Neff thinks he can skirt around any sexism accusations by sensually harassing Garrett.
Well, I just say it was Garrett's fault, and I'm fine. So why the $7,500 goal, first off? So, I know you've raised some significant totals in the past, but don't you think 75 is a little high?
Well, I am right now, because the campaign's been a little slower than I would expect at the midway point. So, now I'm like, I could have started with a lower goal there. But I'll be honest with you, part of the reason why is because, like I said, so I'm just going to use one of my books as an example here. Uncaped. I did issue floppies, right? I did. It's a square bound, a little hard to see, but it's a square bound. It's got, cardstock covers. It's got really nice paper inside. It's 48 pages as opposed to 24 pages like most floppies are. That's not cheap. You know what I mean? Like paying for the artwork, paying for the, lettering, the coloring. I pay for all the artwork out of pocket. I'll be honest with you. That's all paid for. The book is done being drawn. I paid for that out of my pocket, which is a lot of money. But just like the coloring alone, for example, is like $2,000. The lettering is like another $1,000, and then printing is usually, printing and shipping is a couple of grand. And so with my first couple of campaigns for Red, White, and Broke, I learned really quickly that, like, my first campaign for Red, White, and Broke was a $2,500 goal, and if I hadn't doubled that, I would have run out of money long before I finished the comic. They are expensive, especially when you're trying to do more of a graphic novel style approach. With some of these books. So with 8-Bit Slasher, it's the same thing. It's a 48-page graphic novel. It's square bound. It might end up being like 50 pages because we added a little bit. And then you take, when you lose the Kickstarter fees and a couple people that don't pay their pledges, that $7,500 very quickly becomes $6,000. That's what happened to me last time on one of my books. The fees, and you get some pledges don't go through, it adds up. So I just want to make sure that I had enough to print, the books. There's 5 different covers, so I got to be able to print all of them. So yeah, it's a little bit high, but I feel like, because you're getting more than just a 22-page floppy staple comic.
Right. I'm gonna start with you in the hot seat now, because that's what the show is. You get in the hot seat. So you have mentioned several things.
Yes.
First off, we are comic book creators. The majority of the people in this audience are also comic book creators. I will say 90% of them. Mo Biggs we count because he's had more series canceled on these streams than than most of these people have published combined. So we know what it costs to put out a square-bound 48-page graphic novel, standard comic book size, with thicker cardstock, a gloss cover, satin pages, with what, like 80 point, 60 to 80 point paper. Yeah, so we know.
Yep.
We know how much you're paying for that. And with how many backers you got now? Less than 200. We know what that's going to be. If you're ordering a print run of like
133.
If you're ordering a print run of 2,000 and you're going to be, fulfilling 200, that leaves you with 1,800 books to sell at conventions and actually make a profit off of this campaign. Right. That I also understand, because that's really ultimately what we all do. What we all want to do is to make enough of these books that we can bring them out into the world, share them, and make our money back on everything we spent up front on the art. Right. That's how that's supposed to happen. Right. You did mention it's not colored yet, it's not lettered yet, and somewhere here, I think it's the second paragraph, it says it's ready to publish. So it's not really ready to publish if it's not colored and lettered.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, my color and my letterer, once it funds, which is usually before the end date, they start working on it. And honestly, most times my letterer and color will turn the book around in a couple of weeks. So
that's fantastic. Not if you don't have the money for it. Like I said, hot seat.
Sure.
Oh, totally blunt.
So
on the page it says ready to publish, isn't ready to publish.
I think that's a subjective thing. I look at it as, I see a ton of Kickstarter campaigns that are like, hey, we want.
Could you say fully drawn?
It's what's that?
Could you say it's fully drawn? It's penciled and inked. It's ready to go to letters. It's ready to go to colors. The one thing I'm reacting to is the words ready to publish, because that is not true. I get what you're saying. It's finished. The art is done. And I want that to be front and center. So people go, oh, cool. The art's done. We're not waiting for him to finish the last 10 pages. Awesome. Sure. And he's already done the whole book. So it's just a matter of getting it lettered and colored. It's not like the book isn't going to be done. The book, all of the line art is done. I would love to get that through to people without them suddenly realizing in the very next sentence, it just has to be finished so that it can go to publication. It was a stumbling thing. But back to my original point, $7,500, right? Yep. You have a whole bunch of covers. Mm-hmm. I don't know how are you planning to do with your print run? How are you planning to do your variants? Because it can be a pro or a con in this regard to have to fill so many, I don't know how your printer does this. Do they charge a $50 plate fee where you can do as limited, an unlimited number of variants, and that just counts towards your total run? Do they charge you a plate fee per cover? Is each cover a separate order? I don't know how your printer does it.
It's basically all like, it's say I order 1,000 copies among the 5 covers. It's all it's the price for 1,000 copies, and then it's like a $25 fee for each additional cover. So
you're doing the smart thing where you're going to go like get 2,000 to 3,000 books, and amongst the 5 covers, those are going to be the limited variants. So and you're going to print maybe 200, 300 of each of those, and that's going to eat up 1,500 of the copies.
Yeah, except let me I guess correct you on one point. I don't order that high of numbers.
Go for it.
I've never ordered that high of numbers of a book ever.
You've never ordered 2,000 books?
Nope. No,
you have like a wildly successful multi-issue series that ended in a trade paperback, and you haven't ordered 2,000 of any one of those books?
I have not. I don't know where you get, like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. If you can have a campaign that makes like $6,000 in your pocket and have enough to order 2,000 books, I can't make that math.
You don't make that on the campaign. You don't make enough on the campaign to order your books. You make enough on the campaign to alleviate the financial burden of ordering that many books. People can't put out $8,000, but they might be able to put out $2,000 and then make all of their money back selling 2,000 books at $25 a pop.
Right. The problem with that is I then have to put $2,000 out up front that I'm going to be back in 6 months from now, and I don't have that money.
Gotcha.
Like, I'm like
especially after putting out for the art. That is a ultimately that's what we're trying to do, is pay for the art by selling the books out in the real world on the convention circuit or in stores or whatever.
Exactly. And what I end up doing a lot of times, which is not the best way to do it, I recognize, but a lot of times I'll order 500 copies of the book, right? And then I sell the leftovers at conventions until I run out, and then I put in an order for 200 more, right? I'm not yet at that.
So second printings. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not at that point where I'm able to just lay out this big chunk of money yet on top of
What about
everything else.
what about per unit prices then? Because
So
books like 48 pages, square bound, standard comic size, full color,
yep.
gloss finish on the cover, no special cover finishes, like no spot gloss, no soft touch lamination, no foil, no holochrome, no chromium, no none of that, just a standard comic book.
Yep.
You could probably get for sub $3 an issue. I don't know who you're printing with, but if they're telling you that it's like $7 to print the book, 7 or more, they're gouging the crap out of you.
It's not
and that's why you're not making the money.
Right. It's not that much. It's definitely not sub $3 a book, though. I can say that. I don't. Yeah, I don't.
Where do you live? You live in New York, right?
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of printers there. We got a couple of printers out here that if you drive to Connecticut, we could get you around $2 a book. Like that saves you $1. That saves you $500. You could probably make that in gas, and you wouldn't have to pay shipping to get it. Right. That's the other thing. Like if you're paying paying for a 2,000 book run, usually it's the shipping that gets you. Because I was going to say $3 on a 2,000 book run, that's $6,000. But ultimately, it is the shipping, and then it's turning around and sending the shipping out. Because there are a lot of things to consider when you're running those numbers. Yeah. Ultimately, I think $7,500 is very doable, especially considering the fact that you've had mid 200 backers on your campaigns before, right? Like your last three were like
368 backers.
So. Yeah, it doesn't count. I'm not counting that one, and I'm not counting the very first one. And why I'm not counting the last one.
Why not?
Why not? Because it was a superhero romance comedy with a slightly naughty variant cover where the main character is a super heroine, and it is a romance power fantasy for the main character, who's essentially a normal guy who gets into a relationship with Wonder Woman. That is absolutely a fantastic book. It totally plays into the Kickstarter audience, and it has that slightly sexy vibe to it, which is the Kickstarter audience. So I don't count that, because this book and that book are totally different genres, and this is much more back to basics with what you were offering on your first couple campaigns. That one, anything with like a female centric art style, you know what I mean? Like art that really shows women's bodies. Anything with a booby cover, anything where all of the art is women, where there's women in almost every panel, where there's sexy women drawn everywhere. I don't count those numbers, because there's a certain audience on Kickstarter that flocks to those books that will not flock to 8-Bit Slasher or the broke superhero book.
Okay, that's fair.
I have a funny little anecdote. There's a creator that is going to be coming on the show, and they sent us their press kit, which had like the covers for the book that they're doing, and under the covers, one of them was titled "Obligatory Kickstarter Booby Cover." Which
at this point, people have just started realizing that that's kind of, if you're running on a certain platform, you have to have a certain type of cover. And like you said in one of your earlier videos, having multiple covers is just kind of a Kickstarter thing, right? So you've already accepted, well, we have to have like 5 or 6 variants, and one of those variants is probably going to be a booby variant. Sure. I don't know if 8-Bit Slasher really lends itself to having a booby cover. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, dude, I know what it's like. I have giant robots. Okay, how do you think I feel? You think giant robots are gonna no, it's not gonna work.
Especially because they're mechs. They're not like
no. It's just my frustrated anger of not being able to capitalize on and cash in on sex sells because I have anthropomorphic robot characters, right?
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, like, I think it's totally doable to do $7,500, especially since you're consistently in the mid 200s, 228, 256, 218, right around there. And you're only right now at 133. So you could still get 100 backers and reliably, and you have 17 days. You're just, around the, like a little less than halfway. You've still got more than half the campaign left, and you're already more than halfway to the goal. So you're in the slump. Right. And that's kind of where you're at. It's just, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be the slump to the last week. Maybe you'll get a little bit of a trickle, but by that time, if you hit 4K, right, going into the last week, and you only got 3,500 left to go, that's very doable, especially with the people showing up for this kind of book. Now, what are you planning to do to get those 100 people? those 100 backers that you need.
Well, I was really hoping that you would have 100 viewers who would just go right from this show.
I would love to have
I'm
100
sure that's
viewers who would just go
promise made,
running to
in writing.
oh my god, video game villain with like slashers and I wish I had like 10,000 people in my audience so that I could get a conversion rate,
Wouldn't that be nice?
average conversion rate of 100
Yeah.
backers.
So I mean, I've had pretty much the same marketing plan for every Kickstarter that I've run, and they've all worked. So it's pretty much, hitting up the podcast circuit, really tooling it up on social media, and then relying on the Kickstarter backers. I do a lot on Facebook, I do a lot on Instagram, I do a lot on TikTok. I've been doing a lot of interviews, and just kind of building it organically. I don't have a big budget.
You're doing that one-man show thing where not only you're the writer, the creator, ultimately you're the EIC on the project, so you're the coordinator and project manager. You're also the person doing the marketing and advertising, going out and giving the interviews. But you're also familiar with that, so I'm not at all worried. If you were a first timer, like first time out of the gate, with a $7,500 goal on a video game slasher book, and you had never done this before, I'd be worried.
Sure.
I'm not worried about you. You've done this plenty of times. You've run 8 Kickstarter campaigns. You've hit, almost 5, if not over 5 figures on a number of them. 5 of them were the same IP.
Mark, actually, I've come very.
What's that?
I've never cracked 10,000 yet.
Yeah, but 9K on the most recent one. Yeah, I thought that was pretty solid. With 300 something backers,
short of 10,000, and it killed me that I didn't break it. I really wanted to break that 10,000 mark.
Call up Grandma next time and be like, "Hey, Granny, I need you to back a Kickstarter," and she'll go, "What's a Kickstarter?"
Yeah, exactly. Oh man,
what are you laughing at?
People that to pledge on your Kickstarter.
Isn't that what grandmas sound like? I don't know. Is that what your grandma sounds like? That's
no.
If I knew my grandma, but it like so mid 300s, a consistent audience from the time that you did your very first successful Red, White, and Broke, which was like 170 something. You just hit mid 2s all the way through. So it's like he's got an audience. He doesn't. We don't need to worry about him. It's not like floundering in the ether of no. I'm totally going to get $7,500. That said, though, it is a little bit nerve wracking, and maybe doing a lower goal or estimating a lower goal would have helped in this economy, right? Because we're seeing, especially last year, the end of last year was incredibly rough for crowdfunding, and especially crowdfunding comic books because of the delayed gratification element, right? Because of the economic element and the situation people find themselves in. We're seeing, tax returns on the horizon. So probably an easier time to like do some luxury spending or some frivolous spending on things like crowdfunding around, end of March, April in there when people are getting their returns back, if they're getting refunds. Right. So you're ending up end of March. So you still get to take advantage of that, right? Yeah,
hopefully. Yeah. Honestly, had I known Kickstarter was being slow right now for the past several months, I would have maybe thought about changing the goal. Admittedly, I fell prey to, my last campaign was my highest one yet. So this one should match that, or even
not at all. Look at the subject matter.
Sure.
And that's why if you
I get that, but you still get caught up in your own hype sometimes. But here's the thing. I didn't know really the Kickstarter was really kind of being slow right now until I started the campaign, started doing podcast interviews with other people. And then people consistently were like, boy, Kickstarter's slow right now. I'm like, well, I wish somebody had told me that before I left.
Yeah, it's kind of the rough thing when you are doing it all yourself. You're also responsible for your own market research, which is a great reason to have a whole bunch of friends in your corner where you can ask them, yo, who's up with what on Kickstarter? Now you've backed 550 Kickstarters.
Yeah, I have a problem.
That puts you squarely in the Kickstarter mafia.
Yeah, I'm the super.
Why are you not getting help from the Kickstarter mafia to watch your trend lines, to track the backer kits of other campaigns, to compare the numbers year over year for the ROI of Kickstarter investments? Like
that's not a thing that
550 campaigns you've backed since 2015.
I know. Look, you're a smart guy, right? That's no mistake in that. And you understand and I think you operate really well in the business side of things, and that is, I think, comes very naturally for you. It does not come naturally for me. I have wicked ADHD. I have executive dysfunction. I constantly will say to my wife, "Can you believe I've published like 5 comic books that have actually come out?"
Bro, I'm proud of you. like you make me proud.
I've never finished a project in my life. You know what I'm saying? And now I've published a 4-issue miniseries, a trade paperback, and a 48-page graphic novel on top of that. That is like, it should not be physically, realistically able to happen. And so that's the business, the market, the metrics, the studying, all that stuff does not come naturally to me at all. And I don't, you know, to my detriment, it is not something that I'm good at. So should I have done all that stuff? Absolutely. Did I?
Yeah.
No. You know,
yes, you should have. But more, what I'm trying to get at is, don't you have buddies? Buddies that are also doing this.
I do.
Where are your buddies at? Why aren't they getting you back?
They put them in their backer updates and stuff like that. Well, that I don't know. Okay. I do message people and be like, hey, remember when I came back to your Kickstarter? Would love you to return the favor. And on the last campaign, a lot of them did. This one, not so much. But then I'll have people put stuff in like their backer updates, like links and stuff, and that gets surprisingly little turnover. You know, people are like, hey, let me put you in a backer update. You can put me in yours. And I'm like, great, let's do that. But it doesn't matter because no one ever clicks on those because people don't read the backer updates. You know what I mean? And I have people, if I had one backer for every person who shared my campaign on social media, I would have hit goal by now. But people, I mean, my cover artist, Ryan Brown, who has like 3,000 followers, posted, hey, I did a cover for this book. And I think I got maybe 2 pledges for it. It's hard to convert people over to sales on Kickstarter, and whatever the magic formula is for it, I have not quite cracked it yet. I mean, I do okay. I've funded all my books, right? But I haven't gotten that, like, you know, that secret formula yet.
Right. There are very few people that know that secret formula. It's more closely guarded than the essential 21 herbs and spices of the original KFC, right? Like they have that in a vault somewhere. But there are people who have been taking shots at it or coming up with their own formulas, like you know, the reason that the Kickstarter booby phenomenon is what it is, thanks to I guess people attribute it to Pat Shand as one of the first like successful booby creators who really like, you know, cracked the code on it, and then everyone's kind of been duplicating the process. Turned that campaign or that platform into the place you can get booby books, because those don't go to stores, and we don't have Heavy Metal Magazine offering you a place to order more mature books from anymore. So hosting it on a widely available website that you can go and visit in multiple countries where you can't get porn, you know, might provide a release for a lot of people who have a heavily regulated market. That's all I'm saying. Aldous says 8 points of contact to even get a chance to do a pitch in the meat space. It easily takes 8 times that in the internet tube world, unless you have massive boobies into campaign. I couldn't have said it better myself. And he did have massive boobies on that last campaign. Maybe if you had the slasher chasing one of the girls in like a scandalous...
to do that.
But you shouldn't. But you shouldn't have to put boobs front and center to succeed on Kickstarter either. I agree. And that's one of the reasons I was like, well, what about other platforms that you know might exist for you to crowdfund on? Hey, you know, those don't require you to swim with the booby books constantly and be overlooked because you yourself are not a booby book. Maybe go to a platform where there are other books that are normal books like your book, where your book won't get buried in boobies. Although that doesn't sound so bad.
Sounds like I feel like you just described someone's dream.
I kind of want to do that now.
That's my next comic, Buried in Boobies.
Buried in Boobies? Yo, I want a co-writing credit on that. I want a story credit, okay?
Yeah, definitely.
No, I think you're in a good spot. And when I said I'm proud of you, I really am. Putting out 4 issues of a comic book like Red, White, and Broke that got the attention that it did and got the critical acclaim it did, and then putting together a trade and then moving on to another successful IP. I'm really hoping this one is able to make it over the finish line, and I do have confidence in you. Well, so like hear that from me, as much as I dole out criticism and as much as I beat you up black and blue on the show.
I can use it sometimes.
Yeah, I do think that you're a guy who can go the distance, and I'm really pulling for you that you do.
I appreciate
So we're gonna tweet this out. We're gonna try and share it around. We're gonna see if maybe people in the chat would like to jump in and back the book. What?
Even Mo Biggs is impressed. He says it's impressive he's done as well as he has without the obligatory NSFW cover amid the 25 plus variants.
It's fair, yeah. Chauncey says, I guess the panel would agree the boob cover buyers are more so collectors. Well, I don't know, man. I fold them, so you're right. I'm not. I would put it in a CGC graded case, right? No, I want to fondle those covers. Yeah.
All this is you shouldn't
going off the rails.
Meaning have to have a boob cover, but then again, you should have a plot in comic book, and I have plenty of examples of the latter existing.
It's cool. I was at Indie Creator Con this past weekend, and
it is awesome.
It was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of the people there, since it was exclusively indie creators, there was no mainstream and no industry creators there. There were no major publishers, like Boom wasn't there, Dark Horse wasn't there, even though they're like, publishers.
There were people that did stuff for like Image.
That had done stuff for Image, but they weren't there repping Image. They were there repping their own self-published books or their own smaller studios that were putting together, multiple titles done by different people to try and break into a market, which was really neat because it was like us people, like it was like a FUBU convention for us by us. But it was cool being there because a lot of them expressed the same frustration with Kickstarter. They were all like, why does everything got to be titties all the time? Even the people there who had like mature books, like there was a book about, it was a lot like Hypergeist. The subject matter was sex androids, very Ghost in the Shell, like naked lady androids that, you could jump into and ride around in effectively and be used to commit crimes and stuff.
Neon Spring?
I think so.
Yeah.
He only had like 1 or 2 pages where there was any nudity, and he was, going into the whole thing. You shouldn't need nudity to sell your book, but in a world like this, you kind of have to grab people's attention, pull them in, and then give them a story. And he said he'd actually had people get mad, and that was what Scott Wilkie said. He had people get mad.
That there wasn't enough.
He gave him he sold NSFW, and there wasn't enough screwing in the book. Yeah, it was 2 SFW.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. There were only 1 or 2 pages you had to cover up, not the whole thing.
Right.
All right. So, how have you cultivated an audience up till now? Has it just been social media? Have you had a lot of success at conventions? If so, what conventions do you go to?
Yeah, I would say my biggest thing really is the conventions. Aside, I do social media, and Kickstarter obviously builds up something of an audience, but I am relentless at conventions. I will talk to everybody and anybody, and I'm good at talking to people. Like I said, I talk professionally for a living. And so if I can get people to my table, I can usually sell them. And even if I can't sell them, we have a good, fun conversation. I never make anybody feel bad for not buying my book. And I think that, I do go to a pretty good amount of conventions. Doing one in Syracuse this weekend. It's the first time for that show, but I do like Granite Con in New Hampshire, Terrific Con in Connecticut. I've done Baltimore Comic Con a few times.
See you there. Yeah, we're gonna do all those this year.
Right.
So actually, you can't do Granite. It's the same weekend as Baltimore.
Well, I'm doing Granite instead of Baltimore, actually.
Oh, come on.
I know, but Granite is like my favorite show. I love that show. And I have a lot of friends that go there, so it's like it's just like that's the show where I walk in the room and I feel like a celebrity. Everyone's like,
Norm!
I get all these hugs and everybody loves me. And I go to a little convention here in Albany and everyone's like, oh, that dude's back. But I go 3 hours, 4 hours away, and people are like, "Oh my God, Mike Spring is here! Let's throw a party!" It's a beautiful thing. I love it.
That's fantastic. Whenever I show up, it's God, here comes the Grim Reaper, because people have ideas, and I destroy their dreams.
Yeah,
it is.
Hilarious too. That doesn't probably help.
Right? That is also true.
Big hugs from people this weekend.
Yeah, and they wanted to put knives in my back.
I will hug you next time I see you. I'll tell you that.
Okay, all right. I appreciate. I want a big bear hug from Mike
I'm a
Spring.
great hugger.
That'll be great. We'll see you at Terrificon then. Sure. Only once this year, but we'll see you at Terrificon.
Yep, that sounds good. I think that's
Albany for Granite. Oh no. Oh, that was terrible, Mo. That was terrible.
That was wonderful. I appreciate it.
So he's a writer?
What's that?
You say Mo's a writer?
Mo is the internet.
Okay,
He's
gotcha.
the
All
No,
right.
he is the internet. He is an eidolon of the internet. He knows everything. He
Gotcha.
sees everything,
Yeah.
except on Thursdays when he shuts down for a couple of hours for maintenance.
Okay.
That's it. That's why we don't do shows Monday, because you know Mo can't be here.
Ape. Hi, Ape.
Hey, what's up, Arrogant Ape?
Ape says
Neff-
Neff is dream dynamite, aspiration arsenic, and we love him for it.
You're doing it wrong. Don't be stupid. So, what's next for Out of Time Comics?
I mean, right now it's surviving this Kickstarter. I mean, Kickstarters are the most stressful things. I wish everybody in the world who reads comics could do two things: one, run a Kickstarter campaign, and two, man a table at a convention, and just to see what that experience is like. I think it would change very much their buying habits, and how they interact with Kickstarters and con tables and stuff like that. So that's right now is my main goal: is just getting through this campaign, funding it, and getting the book published. And then after that, I don't know. It's like, do I go back and, I have a sequel idea for Uncaped that I'm really excited about. So do I do that one just because I get that bump from the Kickstarter Booby Brigade? I don't know. I have some other story ideas that I want to tackle that are not related to anything I've published yet. So
I think a sequel to Uncaped would be really cool, especially if you bring Red, White, and Broke back into it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's some.
I think that would like pairing your most successful crowdfunded title, which got the attention and it got that shine because of the boobies, and connecting Red, White, and Broke to that because it's a very well established series. It's well written. It's funny. People really took to it, and it developed a consistent following. It didn't have a fall off. It continued to grow, and it stayed mid twos. I think you probably benefit the best of both worlds there, and then you could, off of that second Uncaped book, springboard a new arc for Red, White, and Broke if you wanted to.
Yeah, no,
I don't know how he ended up because I didn't finish the series because I'm a bad boy and I only read books.
Wow, just tell me that right to my face. That's fine. No, I get it.
He doesn't finish anything.
No, I get that.
You said you're ADHD. You know how it is.
Yeah,
you know how it is. I'll be like midway through a book and it's a butterfly. Like,
no, I get it. I buy comics and I put them in order and then I
you organize them in the box and then never touch them again.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely different types of ADD. You should see this room. Stacks of it, completely disorganized, looks like a comic shop exploded in here.
Yeah. I have some of that going on too.
So what's the biggest lesson you've learned crowdfunding? Like, what was your biggest obstacle? How'd you overcome it? What was the biggest lesson?
You're not gonna like it. Ask for more money. That's because, like I said, my first campaign, I set what I thought was a realistic goal, and it was not enough. And that's like I'm being slightly glib.
No. I think that's actually a really great lesson learned. Understanding how far the finances are going to go.
Absolutely.
So ask for more money rather than less money because you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation where now you have to fulfill a book that you can't afford to fulfill.
That's
right.
Exactly.
Like be aware of what your limitations are and plan accordingly. Look ahead, price out everything. And like you said, you like to do stuff after you've researched it and you dip your toe in the water, you kind of know what it's going to feel like. You step on the carpet, you're not afraid you're going to get eaten by a shark, right? You need to research things and know what it's going to be going into it. So obviously are all the different things that you have to plan out when doing a crowdfunding campaign, how much things are going to cost, which is why estimating a reasonable goal is important. And like I said, like I don't think that you're in an unreasonable place. I would expect that a book like this could hit 7,500 pushed the right way. Is it going to be an uphill battle? Maybe. For you, if it's just you doing you and only you, I still have confidence, especially if you've got more than 2 weeks. That gives you plenty of time to push it. Do you have anything planned in the next 2 weeks?
Podcasts. I have a couple more podcasts and then the usual social media stuff, and nothing
social media stuff.
Nothing outrageous planned. No.
No conventions that you're going to hit up.
Well, I do have one in Syracuse, a 2-day convention.
There you go.
And that I'm definitely taking flyers and stuff like that. To try and
2-day convention. Give them 5% discount if they sign up, or give them a free something if they back at the convention. Do a 2-day convention special.
Yep.
Yeah, that kind of thing. You know, play
Yeah.
the market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So is there any advice you would want to offer newbies? And it's okay to say no because you
No,
want
that's
them
fine.
to have a hard time coming up and learn from the school of hard knocks the way we did.
No, I
Fine to say you
always
don't want to
feel
give
like
anyone
there's
advice
good
anymore.
advice to be had. Honestly, you mean like for writers or Kickstarters or either?
Your choice.
All right. My well, you said this mostly comic creators watching this, so like, I don't know if my writing advice is going to be much use to anybody who's doing it, but
Well, I
guess
mean, writing everyone, including me, will take more writing advice if they're smart. Because
it's
if someone else
logistical.
is a writer and writes, if we want to know what works for them so we can steal
Sure.
it, right?
I
So
think then the thing I usually say is if is when you're coming up as a writer, um, yeah, is to sorry, the comments caught my ass. Yeah, that's not actually the worst advice I've ever heard. What I usually tell people when they ask me about that is that you have to put something out. I've met so many people who are like, I'm writing a comic, I'm writing a book, I've been working on it for 5 years. I'm like, great, no one's ever going to read that book. You can't, they're not, you're never going to finish it. Like you can't not write to perfection, especially if it's your first or second book. Like I'm never going to say, hey, I'm the greatest comic writer in the world, but I think I write pretty good comics, but they're out there for people to read and I'm putting out new ones constantly, right? And I know I've met so many people who are like, I've been working on this, I'm getting it perfect. And I'm like, forget that. It's never gonna be perfect. Finish it, put out, get it done and put it out there for people to read. And then your next book you can work on making a little bit better every time. But if you're just never putting it out there, then what's the point? Like, unless you're just writing for yourself, then that's totally fine. But so that's kind of where I usually start when I give out advice is like, just get it done and put it out there. And if it's not the best thing in the history of the world, that's okay. It's probably not going to be anyway, but at least people can read it and decide for themselves if they like it. And you know what? Most people will read something. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing they've ever read. As long as they enjoy it, they'll overlook a lot of flaws, so write something.
That's absolutely true. People say that about Mavericks all the time. They really enjoyed it. And I'm like, but it's shit. So, but that book is a mess. How do you even like it? And they're like, but it was fun. I'm like,
well,
okay.
he's really good at marketing, right?
Yeah, I'm really great at marketing. I'm also incredibly kind to other humans when you compare it to how kind I am to myself.
That's fair.
So
imagine how terrible he is to himself.
Yeah, you think I'm the Grim Reaper, of everyone else's joy and delight. Yeah, I'm just a miserable person. Ape says con specials for crowdfunding sound like a great way to both get more backers and track how much buzz you generate at the cons. Yes, Ape pulling double duty. That's what we're all about.
Yep.
Okay. Chauncey says Mo has his book written before his stream is out of time. No. Mo will write the book when it's published, Chauncey. He's so capable that it'll have to be published first before it gets written. And how that works is kind of the joke, Mike. So is there anything else you want to tell our audience, our viewers in the future who are catching this on replay?
The thing I try to emphasize is, again, I want my comics to be fun. If you want to read a comic that is just going to be fun and enjoyable and you'll have a good time and you'll smile and you'll laugh a couple of times, I think I have something to offer you. The other thing I'll say is all I ever ask from people is to just check out the campaign page. Like, it's easy for me to be like, pledge on my comic. And it's like, okay, but just take a look, That's the main thing I ask. If you take a look at it and you look at it and you go like, this isn't for me, it's not my thing, then no hard feelings. Because I do that all the time. I look at Kickstarters and then I go, I backed a lot of them, as you see, but there's definitely stuff that I look at and I'm like, it's just not my thing. No hard feelings. But if you can't even get them to the page, that's the hardest part. So I would just ask people to, take 2 minutes out of their day, click on that link, take a look at the page, see if something grabs your eye. And if not, we'll part ways as friends and everyone's happy. So that's
there's no hard feelings because it's like, right. Hey man, that looked great. It's just not for me. And I'm spending $40 on Helldivers this month.
Exactly.
Mo says, you just have to rope in a following from Jeremy's chat based on your iconic whoa, Aryan Ape.
I think that's specific to.
Yes, but I wanted to say that. So, I read it out loud. Okay, guys, thank you so much. That's going to be where we call it tonight. If you've enjoyed the content, leave a like. We really appreciate it if you would go check out 8-Bit Slasher on Kickstarter. Links to the campaign are in the description. Also, follow. And in the chat, pinned at the top of the chat. So follow Mike on social media. Where can they find you?
At Out of Time Comics, spelled OUTTA time, all one word, Out of Time Comics. You can find me on all the usual socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all at Out of Time Comics.
Right on. And as always, we're at The Global Freak on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't already. If you aren't subscribed, I don't know why you're watching the show. Leave us a like if you enjoyed the content, and click the bell for notifications.
And tune into the frequency.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.